Welcome to Equal Inspired, the inclusive podcast, brought to you by Equal IT. Kay Kukoyi joins us, who is an award-winning entrepreneur, speaker, author, and global startup mentor. Kay has been recognized on the hashtag IB100, and this is the Financial Times inclusive boards list of the 100 most influential BAME leaders in the UK technology sector. Kay leads the Purposeful Group, which is an online centre for learning focused on entrepreneurship, technology, and digital skills training. Purposeful Group empowers and supports career builders, digital upskillers, and tech and digital entrepreneurs all around the globe with their best-selling books, professional mentoring, specialist workshops, and accredited programs.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are super passionate about tech startups, so we'd love to know what you feel really inspired this.
Tech is something that I really love. I started out with my first career after graduation, actually worked in sales, so kind of broadly in tech, I suppose. And what I was doing there was finding work for people in the tech industry, so developers, project managers, business analysts, and the like. So that was my first introduction to the tech world, and quite intrigued by it. A couple of roles later, I ended up then working in market research for a little while, and then an opportunity came up to work as a business analyst in the tech sector, and I absolutely jumped at the opportunity. I knew it was a great field to be in. I knew there's a lot of opportunity, and I thought quite an egalitarian place to work where I could sort of learn a lot and get ahead. So I was really excited about that. So that's where my real more deep interest in tech started. And I was working for a corporate company in an internal IT department, and my first project was an absolutely massive one. So it was to replace the recruitment system for the whole company across many countries, over 1,000 users, multi-million pound project that city analysts were also looking at. So I think the company was looking to float at the time. So really big project going on for many years, and that's how I kind of first started to learn the craft of doing what I do. And I think just understanding what goes into building a web app or mobile app, it gave me an affinity and a sympathy for people who are doing this without any kind of professional experience, really, because it is a challenging thing to do.
That's really interesting to hear that journey that you've been on, particularly actually starting more in the recruitment side of things and helping with the hiring. I'm just curious because, of course, this is something that I'm involved in as well. What skills do you feel you learned through that technical recruiting that have benefited you to then go into being more of a business analyst and to where you are now?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. So for me, I think it's communication, very much so. So things are changing now. I think was a bit of a stereotype back then. I don't know if it's a stereotype, but there's definitely people who may be drawn to tech, some of them may be more introverted, and so not necessarily sort of people who were kind of the louder people in the room, really speaking up, asserting themselves and all this kind of thing. Of course, there are a mix of personalities, we can't generalise too much, but there was that tendency, I think. So being from the other side, where you like really loud, way recruitment consultants, who are not, backwards in coming forwards and all that kind of thing, it gave me, I suppose, that sort of being used to sort of speaking up a bit more, which is very important because it's important to be understood and also to understand and to feel comfortable to say, to ask questions and to sort of speak what's on your mind. So I think that was really useful.
Communication, that's so important, and it's so interesting what you mentioned there. It's about adapting as well and being empathetic towards the different kind of personalities that we have in tech, because it is very diverse, and just trying to cater to each individual, and like anything, not one size fits all. So that's quite interesting, the communication piece. And obviously, being involved in all of these different areas, it's now led you to be involved with the Purposeful Group. And we'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing and also the programs that you run.
Once I started to get more involved in the corporate tech world, I became an IT contractor. So I started to freelance, working predominantly with corporate companies, building really large multi-million pound tech projects. That's kind of how it worked out for me. So all the projects were really large ones, often lasting more than a year and that kind of thing. So whilst I was doing that, I ended up having two side hustles of my own, which was pretty insane. There's a lot. I don't think I had like literally a spare moment when I wasn't sleeping. There was just go doing something all the time. But I then started to connect with other entrepreneurs and started to hear what was going on in the tech startup scene, and a lot of the kind of horror stories and things not going so well for people, sometimes because they've made mistakes or not sure what the right things to do, and then that's had an impact on their plans and things. So I set up Purposeful Group to help people with those issues. And in fact, what happened was I wrote a book to help people, because I thought, okay, I'm not sure how people are managing to do this, and especially kudos to the ones that are doing it without experience and pulling it off. But I want to write a book that even grandma could read and would be able to understand how to build an app, and it would help. So I put that out onto Amazon, and it became a bestseller in multiple countries, basically. So when I say bestseller, I mean sort of bestseller in different book categories. So, for example, startup categories, development book categories, and the like. So people started to reach out to me from different countries. Basically, I had people from Bolivia, from the USA, from Australia saying, look, hey, I've read your book, can you be my mentor? Because I know, I feel I can trust you, having gone through it, and I feel that you can help me. So that's kind of what got Purposeful Group really started. So now we focus on three things: education for entrepreneurship, technology, and digital skills. So we run programs for tech startup founders who want to take their idea right through to, the whole process, working through the idea, planning, designing, hiring people to build the product, getting it built, launched, marketed, and then on to trying to really build the business and move into growth. And we also support digital learners as well. So lots of tools and tech out there now for the business world, and it's really important that people are able to access that and understand and feel comfortable and confident using those tools, because it's going to put them ahead in the marketplace where people are just much more conversant and comfortable with the tools that companies are using. And I've kind of proven that model, supporting students, training them up and things like that, and I've seen like they're getting jobs super quick. I'm like, whoa, you got a job already. So it's a model that I've used myself, eating my own dog food, as we say in the agile world. So I feel it's a model that really works and can really sort of help young people and older adults to either get into their first digital career or kind of kickstart their careers and kind of move into the digital world or something in tech that they can use as a stepping stone.
That is so important, the work you're doing, and that inspiration, that knowledge sharing, it's absolutely key. And would you say that that's why you got some of the inspiration for your other book, the Entrepreneurial Espresso, as well? Because I know that has lots of cool resources that you can use in the digital age.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's more than 450 products in that book. I gave up counting after 450. I was like, okay, over 450, that's what it says in the book cover. But of course, like there were many that didn't make the cut. So I must have looked at more than 1,000. And then in just the course of my work, I come into contact with new products all the time. So yeah, it's really important to share that these tools are out there to help businesses, small businesses and startups have got a rough deal in the fact that often they've got no time, no money, nobody else to help. So we've got to learn how, what tools are out there that we can use to make life easier.
Yeah, definitely. Have to take advantage of that. And I've even noticed this myself, being a co-founder, a new co-founder, that time is of the essence. So anything you can use to help automate, to help outsource, you want to be taking advantage of that. What resources or apps have really positively impacted you in your journey of being an entrepreneur?
I, again, coming from a corporate background, was really adamant that being a startup or small business does not mean that you have to be chaotic. Okay, I'm so against that, because I think it just adds more problems to the challenges that you already have. Like, if you can have a very, I don't know, I like to call it like a well-oiled machine behind the scenes, it's going to make things a lot easier. So I think that involves sort of systematically going through your business. So even if you're, one person or two people, you're still wearing all the hats, even if you don't think of it like that. So you still might be wearing legal hats, because you might have to find terms and conditions for your business. You might, be definitely wearing the sort of finance, sending out invoices, accounts payable, accounts receivable, checking and chasing people up to make sure that you've been paid. So basically, I kind of laid out all of the different functions across a business that you might have, and thought, okay, which ones do I feel are relevant to my particular business? And then sort of systematically started looking at tools that would help to make each part of that business run more efficiently. So that's invoicing tools, Stripe, especially for big startups to get payments coming in, Charge B and things like that for recurring, taking monthly recurring payments. For smaller businesses, there are lots of tools like Finance PM that are out there, where you can record your income and expenditure, and Toshal, TOSHL, where you can kind of split up your private finances from your business finances and things like that. And there are lots of tools for getting started on the legal side as well. So again, being able to pay for big lawyers is not something that a lot of startups have money for, unless they've been funded sometimes. So knowing as well where to look to find decent templates and things like that. SEQ Legal is one that I quite like for that. So it's just really knowing basically where to go for all these different tools.
That's a really fantastic list, so valuable, and I'm sure anyone who's listening to this can check out your book as well, Entrepreneurial Espresso, and find the other 400 valuable tools that they can take advantage of. And I definitely need to take more advantage of that myself. You said as well that you had 2 side hustles. You had Purposeful Group, and then you've written 4 books, best-selling books. I just want to know, where do you have that energy to have involvement in all of these different things? Because it can be quite difficult when also you have general life that you have to deal with.
I must confess, I think I'm a bit of a weirdo like that. My friends and family are used to it. I very much live in my head, and it's just full of ideas and things that I want to do. And so I think I sort of spend my life just chasing these ideas and passions around and getting them done. And that for me, though, is what is fulfilling to me and what excites me and what I find interesting. So, and I kind of cursed myself a little bit, because after I got the first business, it's like the more you do, the more you can do, right? So somehow it was crazy and it was stressful. But then when kind of things started to calm down, I felt kind of bored. I felt underutilized. So then the chatter started like, oh, maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that. That's what this is basically what my brain does, like constantly just suggesting things to do, which I then go and do. I think this is just, I've come to, terms with that. This is just me. This is how I roll. I've constantly got ideas and I just follow them up, basically, because that's what I enjoy doing and that's what kind of gives me energy. So I think doing more things then gives me energy back, because you feel like you're moving forward, you're learning new things. Personal growth is like my number one thing that I really value. That I go out of this world having learned and experienced a lot of different things. So I think I'm just following that that urge that I have, basically.
You learn by doing, right? That's the thing. Continually working on these different initiatives, you're always going to be growing. And if that's a value of your own, then I can see why it energizes you. And it's certainly not weird. I just want to say, Kay, this is like a very incredible thing to have, to maintain that energy, to have these ideas. Not many people have this. Where do you think that actually stems from?
So I'm a trained coach, a performance and also life coach. So I've done a lot of neuro-linguistic programming and a lot of personal reflection, like what drives me and all these sorts of stuff. So, and I very much believe in that. Very important to understand yourself. I think that's like one of the most important things. And I think our society, sometimes we run away from that self-exploration and don't take the time, but I think it's really important. So when I look back, I've always been like that. When I was speaking to my mum, she said, like, you're very young, you asked me for this and that, I don't remember. And I sort of say, really? She's like, oh yes, you've always known what you wanted. I remember when I was 7, my school report said, Kay wants to lead and not be led. So I always just had my own thing going on that I just wanted to follow. I remember when I was really little, I was watching Blue Peter, show my age now, and there's a Blue Peter appeal to collect, I don't know what it was, like cans or something like that. And then the next day I went to my headmistress and said, can I set up a Blue Peter appeal? So I don't know, I'll cut coupons off things when I was a little kid, send off for things, joy going to competitions, not without anyone saying, I'll just go and do it. So I think it's just me.
I absolutely love that. I think that's really, really cool. An incredible trait to have. For anyone that's out there that's lacking that sense of focus, let's say, what advice could you share to them through the life coaching that you've been doing as well?
So I think it would be to kind of sit quietly with yourself, make some time, like no friends, no family, just carve out a little bit of time, just spend time with yourself and thinking about what drives you, what makes you happy. If you're not sure, think about scenarios and times when you've been at your happiest and try and look for common themes and threads there to kind of get a sense of, maybe what makes you tick or what drives you or what enthuses you as a starting point. And then writing down goals, I think, is really important as well. So sort of thinking, what do I really want? And, not what does society want, not does my mum and dad want, not does anyone else want, but what do I personally want? And then kind of setting some goals and targets for yourself. And then I think really after that, it's just you do have to be a bit disciplined to make sure that you are following up on those. So some people, it can be the carrot, some people it can be the stick. So usually I'm very self-motivated, but I knew writing my first book was going to be very hard, and I didn't want to chicken out of it. So I told some family members that I really respect, so there was no backing out. So that was one way that I forced myself to go through it. But there are, I don't know if the website's still up now, but there was a website where you could put down your goals, and if you don't follow them through, you have to commit to doing some sort of nasty things, which you decide what those nasty things are. So you got like the carrot and the stick. If you've got supportive friends and family, that's another good one as well. Use those. But sometimes if people have got friends and family that don't support them, I would suggest like keeping things to yourself, because what you don't want is people kind of putting you down or saying, oh, what do you want to do that for, and things like that.
I think a lot of the time we can hold ourselves back out of the fear of judgments from others around us. But I love what you said there. It's all about accountability, being accountable for ourselves, for our own personal growth, because there's so many times when you can maybe get overwhelmed with life and get caught up in this journey of just waking up every day, going to your job, and maybe losing that sense of who you are and your why. So I love the tips that you've shared, because it's so important to have that reflection time, because we only have one life. I know it sounds cliche, but we really do. And it's so important to make the most of it, because you can do great things if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody has got something that makes them special, makes them unique, and kind of their special place where they have got the potential to knock it out of the park, right? But if you don't explore that, you will never know. So unfulfilled potential, I think, is a very, very sad thing. Makes me sad thinking about unfulfilled potential. So that's not the Purposeful Group, right? Whether you want to build a business, go for it. You'll be supported to fulfill your potential. If you want to get a better job or make a career change, we're there to support you. Go for it. You can achieve what you want to achieve. So that's really linked to the philosophy behind Purposeful Group as well.
Such a great mission. What do you enjoy the most about being an entrepreneur?
I think because some of the things that we talked about, like, just having these different ideas and being able to follow through on them. I think one of my other big values has always been freedom as well. So because I think I'm a bit headstrong, I kind of like having that kind of scope. There's not like all this bureaucracy, you've got to ask your manager for permission to do this or do that. Flexibility to live the way that you want to live, again, whether it's orthodox or unorthodox. So I think all of these things kind of link to entrepreneurship and being able to design things the way that you want them, not you trying to fit into the mold, but you sort of deciding how you want to live and arranging things that way.
That resonates so much with myself. Like, becoming an entrepreneur was really around having a core value, a core mission, and wanting to make a positive impact. And I think, like you say, when you have that freedom to shape that however you would like and to keep continually working towards that every day, it's just so energizing and you can make it how you want it. So that really resonates with me. Thank you for sharing, Kay. And I'm just curious as well, what has been like a real tough moment for you in your business journey so far, and how did you overcome that?
Touch wood, there haven't been too many bad moments. There's a few things that are going on at the moment, unfortunately I can't talk too much about, which are probably the most challenging. But I think really one of potentially the downsides of well, not just being a business owner, but also I run the business by myself, so I don't have a co-founder. And I think one of the things that I really have decided on this year is actually doing less in order to do more. Because I think you've kind of established now that I'm like, I'll get out there and do everything, if I think it's a good idea, I want to do it all. But that is not always very sensible. So that kind of philosophy of doing less to do more. And also, I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So over the years, I've had to try and grapple with that a bit more and try to just kind of, again, I'm using a lot of tech terms, but ship, as we say, get that thing done and get it out. Because again, perfectionism is a killer. Delays everything. Fear of putting things out there. I see this all the time with people. They're just so afraid to actually put their, whatever it is, creative entrepreneurs as well, to put things out there. But you just got to bite the bullet and do it. So that's something that I'm working on and I'm challenging myself on, so that I can actually progress much quicker.
We can be our own worst critic when we're trying to record a video, let's say, and put it out there, or create content, as you mentioned. And I think that if you take the approach as well that you can't please everyone. So if you post a video, like, there'll probably be somebody out there, no matter how good that video is, and they'll have something to say about it. So I think if you I know it sounds a bit negative.
Like one person on YouTube, there's somebody just had to press it. I don't like.
Yeah, exactly right. But I think if you break down that barrier and understand that, as long as you're happy with the things that you've said on that, you've got your message, then it shouldn't matter as much. But I really, again, resonate with that. Being a perfectionist, when I started doing videos, I remember I'd done 100 videos before I was happy with one of them. And I literally shared them with my dad, who's like my consultant, let's say, on all of this content that I create. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass, the perfectionist side of things.
Yeah, that's right. And as I say, I see it all the time. It's definitely something to battle. And I think I've sort of been saying this as well to people that work with me, just supporting students and things like that on placement, just saying the first version of what we're going to come up with, it might be pretty horrible, it's fair enough. Next time we'll do better, and the time after that we'll do better still, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to be right the first time, but we just have to keep evolving.
Yeah, being resilient with it and consistent, and not just throwing the towel in because it hasn't gone our way. That's really important. Looking at the experience that you've had and the conversations that you've been having with different businesses throughout your career, For a non-techie, the thought of, let's say, building your own app or software product, it can be incredibly overwhelming, even for somebody who's non-techie to get into the industry. So how can we make it less daunting for being a tech entrepreneur?
It is definitely a complex area for sure. Um, I think first of all, it's just starting to educate yourself and educate yourself with the right materials as well. So I run a free meetup community for entrepreneurs. It's kind of sad really because it's gone more or less all online now since the pandemic. But before that, we were kind of meeting in the pub and having great conversations with people who'd come about their experiences. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, that happened to you, I'm so sorry, sort of thing, crazy stuff. But kudos to them, they didn't give up, they kept going. But just some people are just will just say, look, I'm just totally winging it. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just doing whatever I think makes sense. But some things can be quite counterintuitive. So things that a professional, person that creates products for a living would do, they would do things, totally the opposite to some of the things that new founders are doing. But I mean, it seems sensible and logical to them on the face of it. So it really is that education, and as you're moving through the different stages, working on your idea, planning and all that, you really do have to kind of not stop in the way that, we've talked about, like, I give up and all that sort of thing, but stop and reflect and have a bit of a strategy and plan as you move along. Because I think that's where people get stuck, where they've not really got an idea of the right things to do, and they're just, as I say, oh well, that seems like a sensible thing, I'll just do that, without really looking into it.
Yeah, I get that. Self-education is key, and having conversations. Your meetup sounds really fantastic. How can anybody listening be a part of that?
So it's completely free to join. I can provide you with a link actually, so people can just join the meetup. And at the moment, we're doing most things online, but it's a great way to tap into the workshops and programs that we have going on. I will post events that I'm doing for different clients as well. So if people just want to join, come along on different topics. So it's not necessarily even just specifically how do you build your app, but it's all of the other business things as well. So it could be about sales, it could be about researching your idea or whatever it is. So people are very, very welcome to join the group.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kay. You mentioned as well about how individuals can at times feel like they're a fraud and not necessarily know what they're doing. And I have this conversation very often, that inner imposter, that feeling like we're getting caught out. So for non-techies who are becoming entrepreneurs, what advice could you share here to help them overcome that feeling of being a fraud? Is there any resources, any books that maybe have helped you along the way?
I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, but for me, I just think that you don't know, right? When you start something new, whatever it is, you don't know. So it's more about, first of all, starting to sit with those feelings. So I think a lot of time when people, as soon as anyone has any negative feelings, just run away, right? But your feelings are not going to kill you. So if you feel uncomfortable, so what? Feel uncomfortable. That's something I think I've had to get used to as an entrepreneur. I'm somebody who likes to know, what tomorrow is going to bring. Although, again, that's completely foolish because nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes, much less tomorrow. But that kind of sense that you know what's going to happen, you like to plan and stuff. And you have to throw that out the window because you don't know with your business, but you have to be okay with it. So I think actually it's not about trying to find a way to kind of get away from those feelings. It's about more like that Buddhist concept of, you're having an emotion, just let it just flow past you, sort of thing. Like, rather than getting too much into it or almost taking it too seriously, feeding it. So if you're feeling uncomfortable about it, you sort of just say to yourself, well, yeah, I will feel a bit uncomfortable because this is new to me. And so it's normal to feel a bit out of my comfort zone. But I need to keep learning, keep growing, sticking with it. And over time, I will start to feel more comfortable. So to me, that's kind of the way to deal with it, really.
Acknowledging those feelings, yeah, is so important. As an entrepreneur, we spoke a little bit about self-reflection and how to do that if we're feeling a bit lost. But what kind of questions could you be asking yourself when it comes to reflecting on your entrepreneurial journey?
So I think it's important to look back at what you have achieved already. I think sometimes I'm very guilty of this, like always moving forward, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, but taking the time to write down the good things that have happened, the positive things, how far you've come. So I do that and track things and events that have happened so that I'm kind of almost charting the growth. And when you look back, you think, freaking Ada. A lot's happened here, isn't it? And you kind of feel like, wow, okay, that can really be good for the confidence and just to realise how far you have come. And I think also thinking about where you want to go, just checking in with yourself on a regular basis, making sure that you are happy. Another thing is like being fully aligned with yourself. I see that a lot with entrepreneurs, like the head's saying one thing and then the heart saying another, and then they don't move forward because they're not as one within themselves. Like there's like two parts or maybe several parts that are warring with each other, and you can't get anywhere that way. So you need to kind of resolve all the inner conflicts basically so that you can move forward with your whole self and your whole mind and your whole heart, not like, oh, a bit of me's worried about this, so I'm holding back. Or sometimes people think, well, moving forward, there's things that I want in that and there's things that I don't want. So then they self-sabotage because they're not totally all together. So it's been quite good, like my coaching experience and understanding sort of behavioural coaching and stuff to help people to resolve some of these conflicts that they have as well.
That alignment is super important, as you mentioned. And with that in mind, what are some of the other biggest mistakes that you've seen entrepreneurs make or that they can make?
I think one of the worst ones is I don't know how to do the technical side. So I'll find a developer and say, yeah, make me the next Uber. And, I'll leave it with them and I'll see you in 6 months. No, don't do it. So again, that's kind of, you can't get away to some extent from the self-education because you will never then be able to input or feel comfortable inputting or knowing how to manage the process and things like that. So whether or not you have technical experience or not, a technical person always needs some guidance in terms of what features they need to create, what the priorities are, understanding what is in your head in terms of what the vision is, like how you want this to turn out, what you want the end result to be. So by kind of absenting themselves from the process, it's going to be absolutely potluck what they get back at the end. And also there's no kind of review or intervention. You hired somebody, you hope they know what they're doing, but you probably want to know sooner rather than later if actually it turns out they don't know what they're doing. Staying involved in the process is really important, again, even if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable about that.
With those mistakes that you've seen, your workshops, they focus really on starting a tech business the smart way. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
This is about having a master plan behind everything. So no plan sort of survives reality intact, as they say, but it's really important to have a framework, and that's what we give to people. So knowing key do's and don'ts at each stage, just like sort of we've talked about, even if it seems like a good idea, don't just throw it over the fence to the developer and cross your fingers. So there are tons of things like that people need to be aware of that you just wouldn't know if you hadn't worked in the industry. Also teach people a lot of sort of structured processes and things that a professional would do, kind of simplifying that, not throwing loads of jargon at people or making them feel overwhelmed, but just speaking to people in layman's terms about some of the things that they need to consider, tools that they can use, products that they can use to help them, and just giving them some sort of systems that they can follow so they can kind of feel safe within sort of following those through to get them to the next milestone. So we kind of break down all the training that we do kind of step by step to get people through each stage.
Taking something from conception to launch, that can just be really overwhelming, and there's so many different layers to that, what would you say are the top key things when it comes to actually then launching that people need to be aware of?
So even that in itself is quite an interesting one, because often when we think about launching, you might get different answers from different people. So for some, it's kind of like almost the marketing side of things, so like letting people know that you've launched the product. When I think about launching, there is that element, but for me, it's also about having a product that is ready to be launched as well. So it's not just about marketing it, but is it full of bugs, or is it a bit dodgy in places, and all sorts of things. So it's very much about that, almost from that technical side. Have you almost gone through the process of dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's to make sure that your product is going to be ready for consumers to use it, and that they're going to have a good experience and nothing unexpected is going to happen, or if a few unexpected things happen, they're not things that are an absolute disaster. They're things that you can, smaller things that are manageable.
Obviously, everyone's business idea is very different and they do different things, but is there a typical checklist you could share that people should go through all of these elements to ensure that they're then ready to be in this launch phase?
I mean, it will depend very much on the product. There are some high level things that they could do and think about. So what I try to do in my book is to sort of break those down, because there are a lot of things. I think a lot of the workshops, I've sort of cut some of them down a little bit, but they're sort of 4.5 hours for each workshop at one point. So there's a lot of information to cover, but I think the kind of quality control elements, making sure that the product has been thoroughly tested and things like that are really, really important.
That's some valuable advice. Thank you, Kay. And you've also just finished the judging process for a national award. I think it's for startups and small businesses, the Hustle Awards of this year.
That's right.
How was that experience for you?
Really, really good. There were lots of entries. So I was reviewing written applications first of all. So it's a multi-stage process, which is quite interesting for me, because I've judged at quite a lot of competitions before, but it's usually been live grand final. So you're watching people do a 2-3 minute pitch, asking questions, and then going into a room to deliberate with the other judges afterwards. So this time it was multi-stage, so it was reviewing all of the applications in several different categories, and sort of making recommendations about who should be shortlisted. And then we also had a day together where we would review the shortlisted candidates and discuss and debate, and then again score those candidates. So the way it's done is quite interesting, because you give your score at the kind of judges' day together, but nobody knows who actually won. It'll be a surprise when the big event is in London, so we'll find out then who the winners are of each of the categories.
That's really exciting, the fact that you don't even know yourself.
It was quite interesting. I think we were largely on the same page in our groups, because the judges got put into different groups, but now and then you have a bit of a debate about different groups, and sometimes people thinking, I didn't think of it from that perspective. So sometimes people were really sticking to their people that they really liked, and other times they're thinking, actually, that's a good point there, and then kind of reviewing their opinions. So it's quite interesting to see the process as well, when you had like people judging and talking about the candidates together.
Yeah, I can imagine. And as a judge, particularly on these awards, what were some of the key things that you were looking out for?
Evidence and proof has got to be one of the most important things. So people moving beyond just kind of using positive buzzwords. So, we're a very innovative company and things like that. If you're an innovative company, show us, tell us, demonstrate to us how you're actually innovative. Don't just use the word. So those were some of the sort of pitfalls that people would fall into. So the best applicants, they gave excellent examples. They would make it difficult for them to be kind of put to one side, because they've just got so much evidence, so much proof of their successes, whether that's testimonials, whether it's monetary amounts that they're able to name, whether it's figures, whether it's talking about growth, whether it's in headcount, profitability, and all sorts of things. So it was just lots of facts and data and proof, and I think really, that just makes it very, very hard to kind of argue against.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because from a recruitment perspective, we've also been speaking a lot around CVs, around how sometimes you can see a lot of buzzwords on the CV and not necessarily have anything backed up. So in some of the presentations that I've been doing, it's about how can you back that up? Can you share a sentence that shows the impact, the value of you having this specific trait can have on a business? And yeah, it's always backing it up with evidence, dealing with the facts. So valuable. And what have been some of your biggest takeaways from being a judge throughout many of the different awards?
I think it's really going back to just this, when people present the facts and data in a compelling way, that it's just so difficult to deny them, basically. With pitch competitions, it's those people who know their stuff. It's almost like, I sort of say to people sometimes, like when they're planning their pitches, it's almost like, if someone just sort of nudged you awake at 3 a.m. and said, go, tell us your pitch, and just like, yeah, I know it. Right. And you get people like that, any question, it's like they've become like a mini expert in their field. They know everything there is to know about, you think, okay, all right, you've got it down, and that gives trust as well, because you get someone, you ask questions, they're like, oh, I need to get back to you on that, or you can tell they're just bluffing. No, don't really know the answer. You can't have trust in that person, especially as an investor as well, because you think, well, I'm going to give you my money here, and I'm not convinced that you've done all the research that you should have done. So it's interesting, those people who do really well, they're almost like sort of streets ahead sort of thing with the research and the planning. I think it's something that anyone can achieve, but it's just putting the work in.
How did that come around, you being involved in judging at different awards?
The first award I ever judged was a National Student Awards. It's the Tartar Varsity Pitch. So that's students from all around the UK that are then, they go through various stages, and then they have the grand finals. So that was 2019 at the British Library in London. And I think the winner won, I think 15K. So that was the first award that I ever judged. And I think, again, it's just sort of starting to get known in the startup ecosystem, people being aware that sort of I was there and had written the books and things like that, and was passionate about supporting people. So I think it was a byproduct of that. And then from there, more people have asked. And then for the Hustle Awards, I had won an award, a BTA Lifetime Award for sort of services in the tech sector. And I think that they'd seen that that had been talked about on LinkedIn. So again, that kind of increased awareness that I was there, and then I got sort of asked to do the Hustle Awards. So sort of slowly, over time.
That's so incredible. We talk a lot about personal brand, and obviously you found your focus, you found your niche, and you're becoming so recognized for the fantastic work you're doing. And it's just really refreshing to hear the energy that you have and the passion you have for the things that you're doing. So I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast, Kay, and sharing these insights. I know that your philosophy as well is to never stop learning. So I'd really love to know, what is on your learning list for the rest of this year?
For this year, I'm interested in continuing to explore Web 3.0 and kind of the different facets of that. It's very interesting. I sort of saw a debate on LinkedIn quite recently about it, and sort of people saying, well, is there anything that's really of value here yet? And so I think sort of watching that, because again, one, for my own knowledge, and two, continuing to know about these things, that's support that I can give to startups who are interested in Web 3.0 technologies, or starting a business that's going to involve some of that tech. I've also set myself a target, so I've got a Kindle app, so of speed reading books and then sort of taking the key learnings away from that and then kind of implementing them like super quick. So that's something else that I'm challenging myself with this year.
Love that. And I'm very sure that you're going to be achieving that, Kay. Very, very sure. But there's some great goals to have. And again, it's just highlights that importance of having different focuses, setting yourself these targets, keeping you energized. It has been an absolute pleasure, Kay, having you on this podcast. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you. And some really, really good questions that made me think there. Thank you very much. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and we hope you're feeling inspired. If you are, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and join us on our mission to create a diverse, inclusive, and equitable universe. This podcast is brought to you by Equal IT, a mission-driven business working to diversify tech teams through refined talent acquisition, complemented by diversity and inclusion consulting. As an Azure Heroes inclusive leader, we aim for teams to cultivate a strong sense of belonging and equity. Find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We welcome your feedback, questions, and would love to hear from you. Join us next time on Equal Inspired.